Capital for After Hours, I am Tom Dutchick, along with the Power Panel in New Haven, State Representative from the 95th, Juan Candelaria. Juan, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, we're here to talk about the impending and the growing crisis in Puerto Rico. It's on the minds of a lot of us here in Connecticut. Two cities in Connecticut, top 10 largest Puerto Rican populations in the United States. Hartford has the 5th largest Puerto Rican population, and Bridgeport is the 7th. What's your read on this? I'm sure you have friends and family down there.
Yeah, I do have friends and family down there, some that I haven't been able to connect with. So we don't know what's really going on in the island, right? There's so many conflicting stories that we don't know what's the reality. The only thing that we do know that the island has been devastated, and there's a big need for support to the island. So we're gathering together as a community here in the state of New Haven, working on doing several fundraisers to ensure that we get some dollars to the island, to those that need it the most.
There's one on Sunday, I think, right?
Well, there's one this Saturday coming up,
okay.
September 30th. We're going to be throughout the city of New Haven, collecting donations from New Haven residents and anyone that can come into to New Haven to support the effort.
Isn't part of the problem, though, that on the island, it's an island, obviously. We all think of it.
As Trump said, it's an island in a very big ocean, vast ocean.
Right.
Very big, a beautiful ocean.
A bigly ocean.
Yes. Right. But the problem seems to be is even though they get stuff on the ground there, it's getting it from the point of entry into the country.
Right.
Because
Exactly.
no
The problem is the infrastructure, right? Puerto Rico had a weak infrastructure. Now it has been basically decimated completely.
Right.
So now the question is, what resources will we have to ensure that we take those goods and transport them to those municipalities that need it the most?
Yeah. And can you talk about that a little more? I mean, a lot of people don't really know, even before this crisis hit Puerto Rico, there was another huge crisis with the debt that they were dealing with and kind of how they had to cut drastically to public services because of the huge debt that they owed, and how that wound up dropping a lot of their poverty rates extremely low and having out-migration. So can you talk about how that all plays together?
As you know, there have been a big migration into the United States because of what's happening with the financial crisis in the island. We had the premise, and the premise basically what has done is hinder the island even further to cut expenses. So that has translated to loss of municipal jobs. Many of the jobs on the island are municipal jobs. So right now, in this particular crisis, they don't have the manpower. Right, and the manpower that they have are also helping their own families in their own municipalities. So that has been a challenge.
And
Can I ask you a question?
What lessons do you see from what happened in Puerto Rico with the budget cuts, and then dealing in Hartford with the same kind of budget cuts and having to deal with public services and maybe losing a lot of the same services that were happening in Puerto Rico?
Connecticut is facing a challenge. We all know that. They're talking about structural changes that need to happen. I believe that would need to happen. But the question is, what structural changes are those? And the question is, we need to ensure that we preserve those safety net services that are so critical to our constituency. So that's the question. It's a game of balance. And at this point, as you know, that a Republican budget was passed. And the question is, now we have to go back to the drawing board because our governor has vetoed that budget. And we all have to sit at the table and really have a serious discussion about what is important to both sides of the aisle and what the governor will sign into law.
Is it okay if I ask a question?
You can now.
Thank you.
Good.
What do you think of the federal government's response to what's happening in Puerto Rico?
I think the federal government's response has been a delayed response. We could have been more proactive. As you know, one of the issues that we face in the island is the Jones Act. Right, that hinders foreign cargo ships to transport goods to the island.
That was waived, correct?
And that was waived, but that was waived, what, almost 8 days ago? Where we could have done something sooner to ensure that we have our bordering countries and islands helping out the island.
But it's still, there's still a problem internal.
There, and they're having trouble getting all the planes in because of what you said before, the infrastructure. So there are efforts, it's just you have to unravel the mess on the ground before you can accept those that are coming in. But there is movement.
There is movement, and I think the good thing that has happened is that our president has ensure that one of our 3-star generals go to the island directly. That's on the ground. That will ensure he'll have control of the infrastructure and the logistics on the island. So hopefully we'll see some improvement.
I think the fascinating story that I read in the Washington Post says that the response to the earthquakes in Haiti was far greater by the United States because it was a foreign nation. We were able to send military, whereas we can't send the military to the level we can on our own sovereign ground.
Posse comitatus type of thing.
Exactly. So you know, these are the things I'd be interested to talk to you about the Puerto Rican vote in Connecticut and how influential. I mean, 7% of Connecticut's population population is Puerto Rican. When Katrina hit, a lot of the people who were kind of blue voters went to Texas, made Texas a little bit more bluer. With potential immigration, do you think that could be a factor here in Connecticut? Not that we need to be any bluer, right?
Right. I think it will definitely be a factor. There's no question about that. And we're going to see a large migration of Puerto Ricans coming here into the mainland. But they're on both sides of the aisle, as you know.
Absolutely.
We have the blues and we have the reds on the island. So we'll have to wait and see.
So you think that's a real possibility that people are just gonna leave their homes down there and just head to Connecticut, live with their parents, and start new lives? Or
well, what happens is, and it's funny you say that, because I had a conversation earlier today with someone that was able to connect with me, a friend that I have in Puerto Rico, where their family is moving here to the mainland. Why? Because everything has been destroyed. They lost their homes. They lost everything. So by the time that FEMA kicks in and help them reconstruction, right, rebuilding their homes, it's going to take
years,
many months, if not even years.
And they move
so
to
they'll come back here, try to raise the dollars, raise dollars so they can rebuild their own.
And they move to New Haven, then they realize your salary's in Pepe's. There's not one in San Juan, and they come. They say we are not going to leave.
But there's another impact here too that I think is important. A lot of people that will be coming for obvious reasons, humanitarian reasons, are going to be the sick and the elderly. Are going to come here because they have to get here for health care. And the impact that might have on our budget here and elsewhere. I mean, people being transported because the hospitals and all the medical facilities have been severely damaged. That's going to be a huge impact on everybody.
Well, it's going to be. I think it's going to be an impact. But think about this: we're talking about American citizens. There are.
I'm not arguing. I'm just saying that's just the reality of it.
The thing is that whatever expenses are not being spent under Medicaid in Puerto Rico, we'll spend them here, right? Yeah. Maybe there should be a shift of that. But the question is that we're talking about American citizens that are going to need help, and I think at this particular point we need to be united. We need to be united.
Right. Can I ask one last question? Sure. So the term humanitarian crisis has been thrown around a lot in describing what's going on in Puerto Rico. Is that what you see? Is that what you feel?
I totally believe that. I totally believe that. Here, as we talked earlier, you know, right, the infrastructure in Puerto Rico has been weak. There is a financial crisis on the island. And now, with this devastation, the crisis has multiplied tenfold. So it is a humanitarian crisis. It is a crisis where we need to ensure that all Americans are united under this front and ensuring that Puerto Rico receives the resources that they need so they can recuperate and recover.
And this isn't a problem that's going to be going away with climate change. You saw at the UN General Assembly last week that they actually had their first meetings on climate migration. Migration used to happen because of war-torn countries. Now we're seeing migration because of climate change and actual places becoming uninhabitable. And that was discussed at the UN General Assembly. So this is a problem that isn't really going to go away.
Chris thinks that's fake news.
I know. He's just rolling his eyes because apparently these types of storms are normal to him.
Climate change with you, right?
This is a good place for us to all just pray for the people of Puerto Rico.
Yes, let's pray for Puerto Rico.
We really want them to get better
before we let Juan go, let's give us your predictions on how long this craziness in Hartford is going to last.
You know what? I wish I had a crystal ball, right, to determine that. I think that until both sides of the aisle come into an agreement with our governor, I don't think we're going to see any movement. I mean, there's been conversations between our governor and the leadership on both sides of the aisle. The question is, have they moved an inch further to getting into a compromise where we all going to support, right? Because right now, as you know, that our legislature is divided so closely, the Senate divided evenly, the House by 7 votes. The question is, will all of our members support the budget? But if we could get a budget where both sides of the aisle are on board, I think we'll accomplish much.
Well, like the good old days where you had 100 representatives in the Democratic Party and just like do whatever the heck you want, right?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. All right, guys.
Now we're saying
there's a lesson. Great. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for Puerto Rico.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.